Hello there, and welcome to our show. My name is Lou Wieland. I publish the official relocation guides on Atlanta that are distributed by the First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta. They are on the FMLS.com website for realtors to use, and there are 47,000 roughly agents in Atlanta and the Georgia area that use that website and are members of FMLS. We have 5 publications, one for Atlanta, one for North Fulton, one for Cobb, one for Inside the Perimeter, and for Gwinnett County. And they are distributed by real estate agents to people moving here and buying homes. The website, atlantacommunityprofiles.com, is cram-packed full of information about Atlanta if you would like to use it as a resource. There's no password or anything, atlantacommunityprofiles.com. The magazines are on there as well. I'm also an agent, a realtor with Keller Williams, KW Commercial actually, and I focus on investment property. And if I can help you, my website for that is louwieland.com. And Mitchell Palm's our guest today, and Mitchell has been on the show regularly over the last, quite a few years now. Welcome back to the show, Mitchell. Appreciate your coming on the show and taking a minute to share some ideas. And we're not paying Mitchell, so he's volunteering to come on and give us some great ideas and information. Mitchell is the co-owner of a company by the name of Smart Real Estate Data, the premier source of residential real estate information in the entire Southeast. They provide accurate data to the nation's top builders, developers, appraisers, suppliers, investors, and banking professionals. So this is going to be a very helpful show if you really want to get to see a really up-to-date view of the market, and it's been a very unique market with COVID. Talk about COVID, Mitchell. Speaking of COVID, what has been the effect of COVID on the residential home builder market, and at least in the metro area?
Yeah, so funny you mentioned, I'm going to rewind a little bit. So it was about the second week of March. We do an annual housing summit, and it was right when COVID, and people really didn't know what it was. A lot of the sporting events hadn't been canceled yet, but it broke out like that week. And so going into COVID, we had a very positive outlook on the market. Most of it was mortgage rate driven, which we can dive into more as we talk about later on. But the rates were starting to go down again. People wanted to buy a home. Every indicator we look at, just pricing, closings, permits were all on the rise towards the end of 19 and beginning of 2020. So we had a positive outlook. COVID hits, and nobody knows what's going to happen. And so we had extremely bad months, in April and May. Extremely bad. It's still in the back of our memory is the Great Recession. Those are extremely bad months after extremely bad months, just one on top of another one. It was really just a little blip on the radar. It wasn't even much of a housing recession. Once we kind of understood COVID more, people were, maybe a little more relaxed with it. Come June, the market was roaring back again. July, August, September have been 2 of the best months we likely have ever seen in terms of a rebound. And today we are technically ahead in, resale closings, new construction closings, prices, permits, everything today is ahead of where it was before COVID hit.
So how did you do that? How did that happen with all everything going on? That's remarkable. What was responsible for that?
It's pretty wild. Yeah. When COVID did hit, nobody really wanted to sell a home anyways. And so the inventory was on the decline, or it was on the decline even before COVID hit. But COVID just really accelerated it. And then we had this, recession that we're technically in. I believe it was technically a recession, but once that, the rates kept dropping, mortgage rates kept dropping. And what happened is I don't know if, people were theorizing, maybe people want to move out of the city, move out of the suburbs. I don't know if that's quite the case in Atlanta as extreme as maybe like in New York City. But, I think the desire to own a home and maybe people wanted to have more space was a big factor in it. There's a lot of people in the millennial generation who, decided it's the time to buy, and mortgage rates are extremely low. And what is happening is our monthly inventory, so beginning of every month, we see how many homes are listed for sale. We're down about 40%, 50% the last 3 months. And so what that's doing is, as there's no inventory in the ground, but demand is still either relatively stable or even higher than it was before, we're having prices skyrocketing right now.
The how do home buyers see the houses? What about showings? Do you know was it all virtual or what? How did it work that way? And will that continue?
Yeah, but we don't really deal too much with agents. A lot of our clients are more of the home builders. Funny thing that I do have my license, and I had a friend of mine who moved down from Nashville, and I was his agent. So, recently, just a month ago, I was showing him homes, and it wasn't anything virtual. We actually looked at a couple of new construction communities, and just wear a mask when you get inside, and it seemed everything was normal except for wearing the mask, essentially. And everybody hands out hand sanitizer now. It's probably a little different.
So tell us a little bit about the background of your company and the kind of research that you provide to home builders. And you also provide information to bankers and banking executives for their research. Tell us a little bit about how you put together your company and how you help people.
Yeah, the largest portion of our clients are definitely new construction home builders. Most of those are going to be your larger home builders who probably do at least 100 homes a year. We do tailor also to the smaller home builders, so maybe do 5 to 10 closings a year who are very specialized. But the majority of clients are definitely the larger home builders, but the home builders have to buy land and lots from somebody. So there's people who develop the land and lots. They need to sell to the home builder. They know who to sell to. There's also the broker who's helping the land developers, and so there's all different pieces along that chain. From buying the land to building the home. A lot of the home builders, unless they're publicly traded, they're going to need financing, and so a lot of the banking financial institutions, whether it be a bank or maybe a private equity group, they're going to help out as well. And then there's actually the bank, they need appraisers, and so appraisers use us as well. Utility companies, building supply materials, supplying lumber, their clients as well. But we've been around for 25 years, and we're based in Atlanta. We've been covering Atlanta for that time. Entered some smaller markets over the years, maybe 10 years ago, we entered Savannah and Augusta, some smaller Georgia markets. But lately, the last 2 years, we've really rapidly expanded across the Southeast. We've opened up Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota, Naples, and Florida just in the last 12 months. We're about to open Jacksonville, kind of southeastern Florida with Palm Beach, Southeast Coast market. We've opened up Columbia, Charleston, Greenville, all in the last 12 months, looking at Myrtle Beach. And so it's been rapid expansion, as I mentioned. We hope to be in the whole Southeast probably within the next 2 years.
Tell us all about the methods of the research and methods that you employ and how you provide such accurate data.
I can't give all the secrets away, Lou.
Well, proprietary information. You don't knock on doors, I know. But what do you do how do you go about obtaining the information that you provide?
Yeah. Funny thing is, it's all free information. When you buy a home, you have to, there's a warranty deed in the transaction. And so we can see the buyer, seller, the price, and we get more research, whether it be through tax assessors. That's probably the primary helping data point with the deeds, but 95% of our data is going to be warranty deeds. And so we have a team of people who go through and go to each county website, scrape it continuously. And as we're expanding, we're advancing that as well. And so we'll essentially be, going through county websites once a week, every single county, getting this information, sending it out to, people who do, a little bit more of the data entry. And then we'll take it and, standardize it, clean it, package it. And then we have a web application, sort of like a Zillow for builders, where they can access all this data in a nice, clean, professional way. And you could search by a radius. You can do by high school search. Whatever you need to search, we would probably have the capability to do so.
Interesting. So, just what are some of the major trends that you've spotted regarding residential construction, and how would they be projectable to 2021?
Yeah, so most of our data that we cover is going to be the new construction market because that's what most of our clients, will focus on. But only about 22% of all home closings are new construction. The majority of the market is still the existing home market. And 22% really isn't that bad nationwide, and it's about 10%. So Atlanta's still a little bit more of a new construction market. It's not nearly what it used to be before the Great Recession. About half of all new home closings were new construction. Atlanta was the driving force of the new home construction market. We're still top 5 in the nation. But like I said, we usually cover new construction, and then we also cover resale. So our data points are going to be one or the other. In terms of new construction, I mentioned how we were down, April and May. They really weren't that bad, only down about 6% from last year's April and May. But year to date, we're up 8% for new home closings, which is actually tremendous. It's one of the best years we've had in the past maybe 3 or 4 years. New home prices are also on the rise. And then if you look at the existing home market, which makes up, just over 3/4 of the market, that's actually even more successful. And they're both having the same issue. There's a big supply issue. There's no inventory, whether it be new construction that home builders are building or whether it be somebody selling their home. But the resale market, I mentioned how inventory was down 40 to 50%. But demand's still there. And so we're actually seeing resale prices having one of its best years we've ever seen. Resale prices are up 10% so far year to date. And that includes, a couple down months and during the prime, when COVID first broke out. If you actually look at maybe September was up 19% year over year for average sales price. October was up 20% year over year for average sales price.
What about land prices? How are builders and developers coping with the increased price of land, and particularly close into town?
Yeah, Atlanta's had this driving issue for really the last 10 years or so, where the cost of development is also getting more expensive. So it's not just the land cost going up. But if you were to just buy lots, maybe I didn't have the capabilities to develop a land site myself. These developers are having to pay more just to develop these lots, put in all the piping, the plumbing, and the electrical, more government regulations are making it more expensive to buy that developed lot to build a home on. The lot price appreciation has kind of stabilized a little bit. If you keep increasing, what's essentially happened for the last 7 years in a row is lot prices have been appreciating faster than home prices, for new construction at least. And so that does squeeze the builder's margins more and more each time. So builders are going to have to be more creative. You are seeing an increase in new townhome construction. In fact, the second quarter of 2020 for this year was, in terms of market share, new townhomes made up the most market share we've ever seen in Metro Atlanta. And so if land's going up, lots are getting more expensive. You have to build smaller product a lot of times. And so townhomes are usually the easy solution. We've heard tiny homes going in. I've seen a couple developments, with those. But I think townhomes are much more popular. I don't think tiny homes are really going to catch on like some people are thinking. And then hopefully, condos will continue to have a slight increase. The new condo market, we're going to have maybe 300 new condo closings this year, which is great when you consider 3 years ago there's only 100 new condo closings. But if you rewound 10 years ago, we were doing 300 to 500 new condo closings a month. So it's a completely different market.
I saw where the forecast is for first-time home buyers to constitute a much larger percentage of the new home market in the next couple of years, and that, contrary to popular opinion, more and more young people are deciding to go ahead and buy a house and rent an apartment. What do you agree with that? And what do you tabulate the percent of the market by first-time home buyers?
We don't. A lot of times that's kind of survey-based, saying, what percentage, they'll take a sample and kind of get a number from there. But from the numbers that we've seen, we don't track that. We're more of the, factual data kind of company where we want to see the transaction actually happen. But we've heard the same thing, that millennials are the biggest driving force right now for the increase. If you actually look at quarterly home ownership in the United States, so we peaked, in 05, 04, and we actually had the lowest home ownership of all time in the second quarter of 2016. And so we were questioning, is there still a desire to own a home? And what happened is you saw an increase in apartment construction. Rental rates were going through the roof. And just lately, especially COVID, we saw this huge spike in home ownership in the United States. And the primary force, was the millennial market. And millennials aren't, the 30-year-old today is not a 30-year-old 40 years ago. A 30-year-old 40 years ago probably had, 2 to 3 kids and bought their home, 5, 7 years ago, or was married, 8 years ago, whatever it may be. 30-year-olds today are still figuring out what they want to do in their life. And so you're seeing the average age getting married getting later and later in life. And so there's an increase of people getting married around this time, even with COVID, and they want to buy homes. A lot of times or start a family and buy a home.
Well, the other couple of things that are interesting is the area of development in the metro area. People are obviously building in farther and farther away from central Atlanta. And what are trends? What areas of town seem to be having the most new construction of the metro area, I should say, instead of town?
Yeah, so when people think of Metro Atlanta, a lot of times they think of those core markets. And if you're familiar with all the counties, Cherokee, Cobb, Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Forsyth, they're really the driving factors for new construction and resale closings for the Metro Atlanta market. And what's been happening is today the number of new home closings in that market is the lowest market share we've seen probably ever, actually, now I think about it. It was also very down in 05. And that's because a lot of the home builders, when the market started picking back up in 2012, 2013, they went after the counties that are the most sought after, the core market I just mentioned, those 6. And so what's happening is the lot and land in those markets is either completely gone or just getting way too expensive. And so builders move further and further out. And so maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we saw a big push for counties like Paulding, Coweta, Hall, Henry, South Fulton. And those are still doing very well. They're slowing down a little bit. And what you're seeing is some of these emerging markets and very far away. Some people probably wouldn't notice they're in the Metro Atlanta market technically, but an interesting one is Dawson County, for instance. Dawson County is just north of Forsyth. And if you actually look at the top selling new home community for 2019, that wasn't a master plan. It was actually in Dawson County by T.R. Horton, who's the largest home builder in the nation. And so these big builders are pushing out. Another big local builder, Smith Douglas Homes, they've done some communities in Gordon County and Floyd County, and they've been very successful in doing so. A lot of these counties further out, they essentially have had no new construction for the last 10, 12 years. And so there's definitely a huge need for those markets to build there. And the land was, much less expensive than what they were being offered in some of the core markets like a Copper Gwinnett.
There was a formula, I don't know if it's still true or not, but for the price of the home versus the price of the land. And is that still the case? And how does that change by county?
Yeah, every county is a little bit different. Your core market is going to be more of your standard. And so what you're mentioning is you took the lot price divided by the home price. Essentially, a builder is stretched 20%. So if you had a $40,000 lot, you would expect to build a new home for $200,000 or sell it for $200,000. And that's the case. Some of these markets like in North Fulton, you're seeing those percentages go up to more like a 25 to 30%. But some of these builders are still getting 10 to 15 in some of those outer counties, like I mentioned. And there's just a lot more value for them. And then in most of new construction, if you think of like a Buckhead or anything inside perimeter, maybe north of 20, they're going to pay extremely more. Maybe 40% will be the lot price. And that's just because the land is worth so much more than, a fifth of an acre out in West Paulding. A half an acre near Chastain Park is going to be much more expensive.
All right, we only have about 30 seconds. What's the forecast for next year in new construction?
We're still positive on the market. As long as rates will stay low, you should see the demand for buying a home still up there. And what that's going to do is essentially we're going to have a crisis with pricing getting too extreme. You might see a little bit of a slowdown in pricing, but we do think closings will continue. New construction permits are up 30% last month, 40% the month before. Home builder confidence is actually at an all-time high. It's higher than it was in late 90s, early 2000s. So we believe the new home market for Metro Atlanta should continue to rise. We're not going to have anything too drastic, but maybe 26,000, 27,000 closings, new home closings. But put that in comparison, we were doing 56,000 in 2005. So we're still down about 50% from there.
Mitchell Palm, thank you. A co-owner of Smart Real Estate Data. Appreciate that. And we'll put this interview on my website, atlantacommunityprofiles.com. Or if you would like to have a copy of it, send me a request. Lou at louwieland.com will send you a tape. And thank you for listening, and thank you for your time, Mitchell. Have a nice day.
Yep. Thank you, Lou.